I am the Reverend Dr. Suzanne Trilligator. I'm the minister of this congregation, and my pronouns are she and hers. I forgot to say that. And I am pleased that you could all be here this morning. Welcome to the people at home on Zoom. We are a church of open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. All who share our values are welcome here among us. Let me start by saying Happy Climate Week, if one can say that. Today marks the end of the event, which has been annual since 2009, when climate activists gather in New York City alongside the United Nations General Assembly. This year, Climate Week also aligns with the Jewish high holidays. Yom Kippur starts tonight at sundown. It's a time of reflection, atonement, and repentance, which are actually very appropriate for Climate Week as well. Both of these things will inform our worship here today. So, as you can see, I am dressed differently from usual. I usually wear a robe and a stole for people who haven't been here before. But I've had a busy week, and I am wearing what I wore in a climate protest on Thursday with Extinction Rebellion when we stopped traffic in downtown Boston, and I was arrested. These are the clothes that I was wearing. I have washed them since, so you don't need to worry about being around me. But if you can see my shoes, I don't have shoelaces. So if I'm walking a little weirdly and they fall off, that's just part of the thing. I'll be telling that whole story in my sermon today, so I hope that you will stay tuned for that part of the show. Just one tiny announcement. Bill, our wonderful worship technician, noticed a little tiny lag in our Wi-Fi service, so he decided to change the password. If you have the old password, it's not going to work today. And so if you need the password for something happening at church, see Bill or me after service today. So I want to say thank you to our helpers this morning, our usher, John Raymond, our greeter, Kathy Sang, our coffee hosts, Mary Delahanty and Beth Yergrau. Thank you so much for helping with today. Now, let us do our weekly practice of welcoming one another to worship. Turn around and wave to everybody in the room, hug shooters, real hugs. Say hello to the people on Zoom. Wow, that's a lot of people. Hi, people on Zoom. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Oh, it is good to see everybody. Our worship theme for September is welcome. So I call us to worship this morning with these words from the Reverend Richard S. Gilbert. He is the UU minister who invented the concept of voting for ministry teams, which we'll be doing in a few weeks here. He writes, "We bid you welcome, who come with weary spirit seeking rest, who come with troubles that are too much for you, who come hurt and afraid. We bid you welcome, who come with hope in your heart, who come with anticipation in your step, who come proud and joyous. We bid you welcome, who are seekers of a new faith, who come to probe and explore, who come to learn. We bid you welcome, who enter this room as a homecoming, who have found here a place for your spirit, who find in this people a family. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome." And now we light the symbol of our faith, which is the flaming chalice. Here to light it for us this morning is board member Kathy Sang. Thank you, Kathy. Last time she lit it didn't quite work, so she hopes this time it will.
I forgot it last time.
Thank you, Kathy.
Good morning. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join me in the words of our covenant, which you can see on the screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God.
If everyone please would remain standing and join in our opening hymn, which is what is the number, please? 188. 188, yes. Come, whoever you are. One of our favorites. Tom has instructions.
Good morning, folks. We're going to do this as a round. Could I ask all of our round leaders to go to their positions? So those of you who are on the far right, follow Charlie. Those of you who are on the center right, follow Josh. Those of you who are on the center left, follow Joe. And those of you who are on the far left, follow Cindy. And we'll do, first we'll sing the entire piece all unison, and then we'll begin with the first people. They'll sing the first line, and then the second group will come in, starting with the first line, and we'll sing it through twice in our individual parts. Got it?
Thank you, everybody. You may be seated. Thank you, choir. Thank you, Tom. And now it is time for our story. Today's story I have titled, What in the World is Puffling Throwing? And it's taken mostly from an article in Smithsonian Magazine written by someone named Cheryl Katz. So let's begin. Imagine this. Two small round eyes glint like shiny black sequins in the flashlight beam sweeping under the truck bed. It's a cold, rainy September night, and the dark figure huddled in the shadow space is barely visible, except for its striking white chest. A young girl in a bright orange jacket crouches on the wet ground nearby, trying to coax the creature out from under the truck. It is well past the hour that you would expect kids their age to be in bed. But 9-year-old Sigrun Anna Valsdottir, peering under the truck bed, and 12-year-old Raquel Rutt Runnersdottir, shining the light, don't seem to notice the time or the cold. They are on a mission to rescue a puffling. That's a real thing. A puffling is the name for a baby version of this bird, the Atlantic puffin. These chunky black and white seabirds with endearing sad clown faces are known and loved worldwide. But nobody loves puffins more than the 5,000 people who live on the island of Heimaey, a 5-square-mile island off the southern coast of Iceland, where there is the home of the largest colony of Atlantic puffins on Earth. Puffins spend most of their lives offshore in the cold waters of the North Atlantic Ocean. But for a few months every year, they come home on land to breed. As they strut around their cliff-top colonies in tuxedo plumage and with upright stances, puffins look like proud little people. The species' scientific name, Fratercula arctica, means little brother of the north. In March, as the days lengthened, folks in Iceland began looking forward to the birds returning. over the next several weeks, well over 1 million puffins will arrive in the mega colony there. Life partners, groups of 2 separated during their time at sea, will reunite in the colony and lay their single egg in an underground burrow dug out of the grassy cliffs. The July sea and sky will churn with birds ferrying food to their hungry chicks. The pufflings, the babies, emerge at night from their underground digs in late August and September. By this time, most of the adults have already departed for the winter on the open ocean. Now it's time for the chicks to follow the moon lighting their path to the water. That's a chick. But on their first flight leaving the burrow, some birds get confused by the lights of the town, and they head inland instead of out to sea. And that's a problem. And here's another problem. Puffins are amazing swimmers. They're able to actually dive 200 feet underwater, thanks to their bones that are dense, unlike the light, airy bones of most birds. But these dense bones make it really hard for pufflings to take off in flight, especially the first time. They have to launch themselves from cliffs and catch a breeze. When pufflings land on the streets in the town, their wings are too weak to get them aloft, and they get stuck. They become stuck in the village and vulnerable to cars and predators and starvation. So it's really dangerous for them. And in recent years, the number of puffins in the world has plummeted, and the bird has become seriously endangered because of this. So, enter kids like Sigrun, Anna, and Raquel. They are working on this. This is Sigrun. Once a year for about a week, they get to stay up late as part of the Puffling Patrol, a volunteer brigade that roams the town, peeking under parked cars, behind stacks of bins, under equipment that's jumbled up in the harbor, looking for stranded little birds. The kids are especially good at catching them because the birds run really fast, and the kids are faster, and they have nimble, small hands. They're much better at it than the grown-ups. But the whole town joins in, even the police. The rescuers then take each bird and they put it in a box, like a box from Amazon or a shoebox that you would have at home. But they've plucked air holes in it and they put some grass there, and they put one bird in each box. Then the next day, they all take their boxes to the cliff, and they literally take each bird and throw it off the cliff. There's a picture of kids doing that right now. They have to throw the bird in order to give it enough thrust to take flight. On this island off Iceland, it's become an annual tradition for all the children and all the families to spend a whole week saving birds. I feel proud that I helped get a bird to the ocean, said one young woman, and maybe someday I'll get to rescue its pufflings. Thank you for listening to the story. You can now go downstairs and be part of your RE classes. Thank you. Every Sunday in the center of our service, we take time for quiet, prayer, meditation, whatever you like to call it. We use this time to get in touch with our inner selves, our highest ideals, our sense of the divine, however it is we each understand that to be. So I invite you now to settle into your seats, take a deep breath, relax. In our meditation time together, first we'll join in our centering song, then we sit for a few minutes of shared quiet, and then we speak to one another of our joys and sorrows, and then today I will lead us in a guided meditation. Our worship theme for September is Welcome, so our centering song for the month is There's a River Flowing Through My Soul, which is number 1007 in the Teal hymnal. The lyrics will appear on the screen. So please remain seated, join in as you like. Let the song gently guide you into our time of shared quiet. It's our tradition here in our worship service to share with one another our joys and our sorrows. When we speak to one another from the heart and when we listen deeply, we knit together our community even stronger. I invite the people on Zoom to go ahead and type into the chat box, and I will read. If you have a sorrow, we're doing sorrows first. If you have a sorrow today, please type it into the chat box. I invite anyone who has a sorrow to share to please come forward. Is it on? Let me see. There we go.
Lisa, I would like everyone to please keep my sister Kelly in your thoughts this week. She had diverticulitis, and in most cases it wouldn't be a serious situation. They could just reconnect with her intestines, take out the diseased part and reconnect. But she had a serious illness a number of years ago that's left a lot of scar tissue in her stomach, and she might be 43 years old and looking at a colostomy bag for the rest of her life. So they're hoping everything goes well, but it could be a real tough thing. And she's the primary caretaker of my mother and of other people as well. So it's a big deal. So please keep her in your thoughts.
What's your sister's name again?
Kelly.
Kelly. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Hi, my name is Nyla, and I'm lighting a candle in memory of my former brother-in-law. Sorry. David gave me permission to light a candle this morning. He passed away last week, and my daughter and I are going to join the family in Madison, Wisconsin, and I just want to, kind of really grateful to him for being the character that he's always been, and having known him for about 40 years, it feels like a big loss. Even though he was 79, he feels like a peer, So anyhow, just really recognizing the preciousness of this life. So,
Want a hug?
thank you.
Hi, my name is Barbara Lambiaso, and I'd like to light a candle in observance of Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah as well for the year holiday. And it's neither a joy or a concern. It's just a part of, the year coming to a close and reopening. It's about forgiveness and forgiving and remembering the people in our lives who are no longer with us. So I'd like to light that candle.
Thank you, Barbara. John will do one candle in just a minute. Let me just check the Zoom chat to see if we have any sorrows there. From Martha. Candle of concern. After avoiding COVID for several years, I tested positive last night. So far, symptoms are only those of a cold. Hopefully they will stay mild. That's Martha. Yeah, John, thank you. Lighting this one candle for all the sorrows that were spoken and all those that are unspoken and remain in our hearts. Let the candle be a reminder to all of us to reach out to people in our lives who are hurting with love and care. Now I invite people who have a joy to share this morning. Go ahead and come forward. People on Zoom who have a joy, you could type it into the chat box and I will read them.
Hi, I'm Doug Dick, and I had a wonderful experience yesterday at the place of my daughter's work, Olivia, who many of you know. She's an occupational therapist, and her group, Occupational Therapy Associates, celebrated their 40th anniversary, and they put together a big fundraiser, and I finally got to see this amazing place my daughter works, met the amazing people she works with, and got a much better appreciation for how important occupational therapy is to the young people that they work with. So it was a great experience. Thanks.
Hooray for OTs.
All right, so now I'm John, not Lisa. So we both wanted to say thank you to everyone for your support, and I don't think Brian is here today, but oh yes he is, for Brian for getting the card together for John and spearheading that. We received it this week, thank you very much. And for everybody who offered to help or gave us advice on setting up our house to help John get around, and he's doing very well. He's got a long road for recovery from a stroke, but he's doing very well and he's here with us today, so glad to have him.
Hi, my name is Wendy Mastronardi, and I have 2 candles of joy. I have permission from Michelle Morey and Bill Trippi to share that Nathaniel got engaged yesterday to someone who went to elementary school with him, which they kind of reconnected 4 or 5 years ago. Really fun. Tara Gator from Melrose. So that's very fun. And personally, my sister and nephew, 16-year-old nephew Sawyer, agreed to do a weekend trip to New York City. We're gonna, the weekend before Thanksgiving, Sawyer's going to see 2 schools, Columbia and NYU, and we've been recommended to see MJ the Musical, so that's our fun New York excursion.
That's fun.
Hi, Chuck Foley. Glad to report that my thumb is just about healed and the stitches come out tomorrow. And with the postponement of Melrose Porch Fest yesterday and today, I expect I'll be able to perform as I had planned next Saturday. So that's one joy. The other is glad to see that you got released okay, Reverend Suzanne, and that made me think about the notion of cash bail, which I've heard characterized as criminalization of poverty. And so I consider it good news that I saw this past week that the state of Illinois became the first state to do away with it entirely. So I think that's a good thing.
Thank you, Chuck. Amen. And hooray for your thumb. Thumbs up. There are no joys in the Zoom room. So I'll just put this down, and then I will lead us in a guided meditation. Oh, and please, John, light a candle as a reminder, which I need to feel grateful and be grateful for all of the many, many blessings in our lives. So instead of a prayer today, another weird little experiment, I have a guided meditation. It's just brief, and participation is always optional. But if you want, I invite you to close your eyes and to relax. Imagine that you are at home on a day off with not that much to do. The phone rings, and it's someone you love, maybe even your best friend. Imagine this person's face as you listen. Allow your feelings to arise. This person you love, maybe your best friend, on the phone, sounds upset. They're struggling. They need your support. How do you respond? What feelings arise in you? Do you feel compassion and love for this person? Are you holding your friend gently, speaking words of kindness and patience? I bet you are. Good job. I bet you give your friend all the space that they need, and you tell them again how important they are to you. Now, if you would, let that scenario dissipate. Let it go, knowing that you handled it well. And maybe take a breath. Now let's imagine that you are in a similar place and time, at home, relaxed. But this time, the distress, the upset is coming from you, from within. Feelings of fear or anxiety are coming up for you. What if in this moment, you allowed yourself to be your own best friend? You held yourself with love and care just like a best friend would. What if you listened deeply to yourself, allowed your feelings, gave yourself the compassion and kindness that a best friend would give? Let yourself imagine that just for a minute. Thank you for trying this with me. I wish for you a best friend like that, one that you can take wherever you go. Amen.
I guess everybody was deep in meditation. Now is the time for our offertory. Our church is a self-supporting organization funded by your generous annual pledge. You may also contribute to our weekly collection plate, which we split every month with a deserving cause. Folks on Zoom can donate either way using the orange button at the top right corner of our homepage at melroseuu.org. For the month of September, In honor of our annual water ceremony, this church will be giving half our collection plate to the charity called water.org. This is a global nonprofit working to bring water and sanitation to the world. And today for our offertory selection, the choir will sing "We Bid You Welcome" by Jason Shelton.
Thank you. Our reading today is from the preface of this book called Facing the Climate Emergency, subtitle, How to Transform Yourself with Climate Truth. This book is written by Margaret Klein Salomon. She is a clinical psychologist, and as far as I know, I think this is the first book to actually look straight at our feelings about the climate emergency. So, this is from the preface, as I say, the very first page. And she writes, "When I wrote the first edition of Facing the Climate Emergency in 2019, the idea that the climate emergency was profoundly affecting our psychology was still a bit marginal, but conditions are changing rapidly. Today, the pain is more widely acknowledged. The world's largest ever study of young people's emotional reaction to the climate emergency surveyed 10,000 people in 10 countries. Published in 2021 in The Lancet Planetary Health, this study found that 56% of young people believe that humanity is doomed. 46% report that climate distress affects their daily ability to function. They blamed their governments. 58% reported feeling betrayed by government inaction. According to another study from 2020, more than a third of millennials and Gen Z don't want to have children because of climate change." Here ends our reading. So I had this thought that maybe I should just put that statistic on a slide, 56% of young people believe that humanity is doomed. Just put it on a slide and then come and sit among you, and we could just all look at it for 20 minutes. And that would probably be the best sermon I ever did. Because it's really, really hard to get your mind around that idea. A majority of our kids, the people that we love, believe that humanity is doomed. I read that paragraph to my 20-year-old daughter yesterday, and she gave me her standard reply, which looks like this. But then she said, "It's way more than that, Mom." Which, got me right in the belly. So, going to talk about that today, about welcoming the unwelcome. And, usually in our learned tradition, I stand over there and I read you things and statistics and blah, 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 learned studies and such. But today I'm not going to read anything. I'm just going to tell you the story of what I did and why I did it. And just speak from the heart, because I think now's the time to do that. But I didn't sleep much this week, so I'm going to actually sit down while I do that. And I warned Mary Hildebrand that she might not be able to see me. So I have some cheaters on my hand here. First of all, I think what the elephant in the room might be is, Reverend Suzanne, why are you wearing a clergy collar? I don't like that. I'm assuming that there are people in the room who don't like it. And I think, the answer is baked into the question, because I'm a member of the clergy. And this is a powerful symbol out in the world. It's not something that Unitarian Universalists have traditionally done, at least not in the 20th century. But in the last 20 years, younger ministers especially have started wearing collars when they do public witness, which is what we call, speaking at the city council meeting or being in a protest or just representing us out in the world, so that we can claim, this powerful symbol, which, is ours too. And I've got colleagues in Texas who have community office hours at the Starbucks, and it's still a big deal there when a woman wears a clergy collar with a rainbow pin. I mean, just seeing that is important in Texas. Maybe not so much in Massachusetts. I don't know, Melrose is still pretty Catholic, so maybe that would be a thing. But I have a black shirt as well, and I haven't really worn them. But I had it on the other day because I was getting ready, and I was waking up my 17-year-old for school, and he looked at me, and he'd never seen me, and he jumped out of bed. He's like, "What are you wearing? I don't like that." It's something I think we got to get used to. It's part of welcoming the unwelcome, I think. Anyway, when I wore it this week at Extinction Rebellion, people thanked me. So I'm probably going to keep doing it. So what happened? What did I do? I'm going to talk about it, and if there's time, I'm going to keep checking the time on my phone. I'm not texting. I'm just looking at the time. If there's time at the end, we can have questions, or we can do the questions and coffee hour. So, I knew that September was Climate Week, and I knew that things were going to happen in Climate Week, and I thought about maybe going down to New York for the big march. But I had been following Extinction Rebellion Boston, and I thought, well, maybe something's going on here. Let me check in with them. Especially since, we did a G-Bow with them, I think it was 2 years ago, and Green Sanctuary chose them. But there were some people who were like, their tactics are pretty out there. I don't know if we want to support them. And we talked about it, and we decided to do it. And so that was great. So I've been following them ever since. And so, I had been interested all my life in nonviolent direct action and the idea of getting arrested, because I think I could do it. I think it's part of my job. But I hadn't had the opportunity, and with them, you have to take their training so they know that we're all on the same page. And every time they had a training, I couldn't go because of a church thing. And in early September, they had a training I could go to, so I went, and I asked all my questions. And it was led by this really smart young woman in her 30s, and she talked about what their aims were, what their demands were, how the process works, what it's like to get arrested. And then they put us in small groups, and we got to ask all our questions. What's it like? What does it feel like? And this woman who was in my small group, who had been arrested, was this millennial woman. And I asked her, I said, so she had been arrested in a sit-in at the State House, and they had sat in, for a whole day. And my question was like, what if you have to go to the bathroom? And she told me the secret, which is adult diapers. And I was like, oh, well, I didn't bargain for that. I don't know how I feel about that. And we'd take a couple days to think about how I feel about that. And I did. But I also asked her, what was your experience like? How did it feel, And she said, I'm a white woman. I'm a young woman, and she didn't say this, but I thought it. She's a pretty woman. The police treated her pretty well. When she got into the cell and she needed to use the bathroom, they all turned their backs, which is, a measure of dignity that not everybody gets. And she said, I knew they were treating me different. I realized that. I felt that. And then I realized, I should be doing this then. If they're going to treat me different, I have this privilege, that all the more reason for me to get arrested so that somebody who might not be treated so well doesn't have to get arrested. And she said, after many, many years of feeling powerless about climate change, after I got arrested, I didn't feel powerless anymore. I felt like I could actually do something that made a difference. And for me, it was really empowering. So that was really all I needed to hear. Then I went to an in-person meeting where we did a walkthrough of what we were going to do, and we met the people who planned the action, and they talked about it. And these people are so smart. I had this feeling when did I last have this feeling that I have in this room with these people? And I realized the last time was this is going to sound stupid, but in a class at Harvard. This is how smart these people are, and focused and committed and polite and just focused, They're a really impressive group of people, and they had thought about it. They had all the roles really defined. They have orange roles, red roles, and green roles in everything that they do, so that, you decide beforehand if you're willing to get arrested. And if you want to, you take this job, and if you don't, you pass out flyers to people who are walking by. They have a whole jail support team. They got people who work with our pro bono lawyers. They got the whole art group who makes these T-shirts and the banners and everything. It's incredibly well thought out. And the person who created this action that we were going to do had spent a long time clearly thinking about it. So we practiced it, our formation, how we would turn corners, all of this. And in that group, they were giving away this book. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll read the book. And that book now, I carry it around with me. My family is really annoyed because I lose it every day. I had to ask them to help me find it, and Quinn found it next to my pillow. So it's my Bible now, that book. It really is speaking to me. And in that meeting, we talked about the kinds of roles that we had, and we talked about this metaphor of, all of humanity lives in this house together, this home that is on fire. And most of the people in the house are sleeping. There's a few of us who are awake, and we're just running around screaming, trying to wake everybody up. And there are arsonists. There are people who are still out there lighting fires, and we need to do something about that. And our government is the fire department, and for some reason, they're not taking our calls. And that metaphor really stuck with me. And they asked me, why are you doing this? And one of the things I like most about Extinction Rebellion is they keep asking, why are you doing this? It's really grounded. Everybody has their own reasons, and we talk about it a lot so that we're good at talking about it, and then we can go and talk to other people about it. And, the first thing that came to me, why am I doing this? For my children. Duh. But, also everybody's children, rivers, trees, birds, all of it. But, as I'm sitting with this for 2 weeks, why am I doing this? Eli, Lily, Quinn, these are my kids. I love them. They deserve to have lives. But also, what's underneath all that is I'm so angry. I spent 20 years of my life, with diapers and dentists and dinners. 10,000 times I made them dinner. I worked really hard to raise these children, and it is not going to be for nothing. So it's more about anger than love for me at this moment. But that's okay. That's okay. I'm animated about it. So in this meeting, we also practiced de-escalation techniques, which is basically just getting used to people yelling in your face and figuring out how to keep calm and keep breathing so that, it doesn't become a fist fight. And that's good, and I'm okay with that, I know how to do that, actually, and that's where sort of the Pema Chodron, welcoming the unwelcome, meditation practice comes in really handy. And that was helpful, and I'm glad we did that. Pema Chodron talks about accepting what is, embracing what is. And, we all have unwelcome things in our lives. We all do. And the most empowering thing that you can do, especially about the climate, is to actually live in the truth. We live in a culture that doesn't want to see the truth. They want you to remain sleeping. We don't want to see the truth because it's really hard, because it hurts a lot. It's so painful. But the truth is the only thing that's going to make a difference. So one of the other things that I love about this book is that it's the first one I've seen, and maybe it's been out there forever, but that says, it's not too late. It is not too late. Yes, we cannot save everything. There are species that are gone, that are going to stay gone for good. But we can still save some things. We can save some things. We can save some of our children. It's going to take a massive mobilization, and that's what the phrase climate mobilization means. The book talks a lot about the mobilization in World War II. The first, when FDR, it took them bombing Pearl Harbor for the American people to decide that they wanted to mobilize around that, but the threat became clear, and FDR said, let's make 30,000, let's change all the factories in the whole country and make 30,000 planes in, this year. And people thought he was crazy. But people did it. They did it. And by the 4th year, they were making 200,000 planes a year. So when we work together, we actually can do something. We could do something big if people would wake up. We could do this huge mobilization. We could save some of the planet. We could save some of our children. Why are we not even trying? Our one demand this was all about, was for Governor Healy to honor her campaign promise, no new fossil fuel infrastructure. Not digging out all the stuff that's already there, but just stop building more. That's not too much to ask. She promised she would do it. They're still building buildings with gas pipelines, laying new gas pipelines. They're trying to expand Hanscom Airport for more private jets. Private jets take 14 times more fuel than regular. You know, they want to expand Logan. Do we really need to do that? Do we? Or is it time finally to turn this around? So, what happened on Thursday? We left the house super early. We met down at South Station in 3 separate groups, kind of incognito. And then at one point we put our t-shirts on and we went out and in 3 different groups, we stopped the traffic around the Rose Kennedy Parkway. Technically, we didn't stop. We were walking very slowly in the street. So, you know, a car could have followed us for a block and then turned off. We weren't actually literally stopping them. That was the plan, at least. But the police got there much quicker than we thought they would. So we only really stopped the traffic for about 15 minutes. And yeah, about 25 of us got arrested. But we got press coverage. A lot of what Extinction Rebellion doesn't get press coverage anymore. But when people get arrested, and when a lot of commuters get pissed off, you get press coverage. So that made it worthwhile. I didn't know that. You don't know what's happening. You don't know if you're going to get press coverage. Like a year ago, they had an action and they sent out press releases, and when they got there, the police were already there. So this time around, we tried really hard to keep it secret. I know a lot of people asked me last week, like, what are you doing? When I mentioned it in a sermon, and people said, what do you mean you're getting arrested? And I said, well, I can't tell you. And people thought, like, what are you, James Bond? You can't tell me? And that's why, So we, we're on this texting thing that's encrypted, so that hopefully we can get a chance to stop traffic before the police stop us from stopping traffic. So we did that, and people got in our faces and yelled at us. I was wearing this, and people came up and yelled, what are you doing? You guys are losers, you're scum, get a job. One woman in office attire came up from behind yelling, I don't know what your cause is, but whatever it is, I'm against it. Which is weird when you think about it, right? Just like what we were doing made people so angry. That we dared to stop traffic made people so angry they needed to yell at us. Which is weird because the drivers weren't yelling at us, it was pedestrians. And they were not impeded in any way. I don't know why they felt they had to yell at us. There were some pedestrians who said thank you, and that was helpful, that was encouraging. Anyway, the police came, they said, if you don't disperse, we're gonna arrest you. And that's when they said, sit down. Now, I really enjoyed that millennials were leading this, that I did not have to lead it. All I had to do was be a follower, and I trusted them, and I followed them, and I sat down. And because I was on the side, I was one of the first people the police came to and said, put your hands behind your back. And I said, would you mind if I stood up first, just because I need my hands to stand up? I'm an old person. I can't just, anyway, and the cop, police officer said, sure. So I stood up, put my hands behind my big, thick zip tie, pulled pretty hard. It was okay for me. There was also another UU clergy person with us, and they did her hands way too tight. She was in a lot of pain. Then they separated the male-appearing people from the female-appearing people. The cops decided what our genders were, and they wanted to process us separately, so they put all the women over in front of the paddy wagon. Shouldn't call it a paddy wagon. That's a slur against Irish people. I apologize. But, that's what it is. And it was a really, really old vehicle, too. Anyway, I had to climb into it, which I couldn't do without holding onto handles, but I couldn't hold onto handles, so I had to kind of scooch back on my bottom. It was very undignified, but what is dignity for, anyway? And they're just 2 hard benches and it was a very bumpy ride, and there were 8 women in there, no seat belts, no nothing, no light fixtures. You know, I realized they make getting arrested as unpleasant as they possibly can to discourage you from doing it, and also because it really feels like there is a presumption of guilt. You are guilty until you're proven innocent, not the other way around. Because the conditions, I mean, you wouldn't treat a dog like this. And even if people are guilty, they shouldn't be treated the way we were treated. I mean, nobody abused me, but the cell, was really, really disgusting, really disgusting. And they were in no hurry to help us get out of there. Anyway, so they took us down. They didn't tell us where we were going, but it was in the wagon. There were 4 gray-haired people and 3 millennials, seemingly to me. And they had done this before, and they did what they wanted to support themselves, which was singing. They did beautiful singing. These women are good singers. They actually did something, a 3-part harmony. It was beautiful. So that, you know, buoyed our spirits, reminded us why we were there. We were all feeling okay about it. And then they took us to Southie, and took us into a room, and I had quite a pat down, very thorough. They took out my earrings, took out my shoelaces, everything out of my pockets. You know, I've got my hands tied, right? So these are people going in my pockets for me, taking out my earrings for me, which is weird. That's a very weird experience. And then they put me in a cell for about half an hour, and then they called me back and did all the fingerprinting, which is also a really weird experience, and had a phone call. But they didn't tell us what was happening, you know. We just, like, I was literally in this cell, and I had said to myself, when I get out, I'm going to find out what year they invented cinder blocks, because whatever year that was when this building was built. Because I think of cinder blocks as like 1950s, 1960s. This building was older than that, because it was dirtier than that. Like, turns out cinder blocks were invented in 1880. And I think that's about the time that this thing was built, because it was really disgusting. Also, there was like many men, when I walked into the cell, so there was a hallway with 8 single cells, and we had 8 women, so that's where they put us, 1 in each cell. And I walked into this thing, and it was, first of all, like graffiti. How is there all this? They took everything. And I realized later it's not graffiti, it's layers of paint with people with nothing to do scraping the paint with their fingernails. And I thought, oh, that's gross. 4 hours later, I was scraping the paint with my fingernails. There's nothing to do. There's nothing, because they take, you know, there's no phone, no books, no TV, no nothing, nobody to talk to, no food. I mean, it's been a long time. I don't think I've ever, you know, anyway. And it was about 8 feet by 6 feet. I measured with my feet. Like a bathroom, like a big bathroom, cinder blocks. So it was very echoey. But we kept singing. And in that space, like, I actually have a really good voice. I don't. You all know I have a terrible singing voice. But it's like singing in the shower, you know, when your voice is like that beautiful echo, and I actually sounded good. And all the other women were singing. It was so echoey that we couldn't actually talk to each other. We couldn't make out each other's words, but we could understand the melody, and that was really nice. So we sang a lot. I mean, I can't believe we didn't all lose our voices. And that went on for a really long time, because nobody had a watch. We didn't know how long a time it was. We just sat there waiting and waiting and waiting. Anyway, around about 5:30 p.m., I was called out again, and they took my $40. I think the woman I spoke to who didn't identify herself, I think she was a bail bonds person, and they told you to bring just your ID and $40, and so she had me sign 2 things and took my $40. And she said, so you have a court date tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Boston Municipal Court. If you do not appear, we will issue a warrant for your arrest. So I appeared. So the next day, you know, you got to fight rush hour again, get downtown Boston, and thank God there were no stupid protesters blocking my way. Anyway, so I went with my people again, and we all met up down there. The men had already been processed the day before. The women were all together, processed as a group. So I got to sit in court and see how they treat, you know, real criminals and what that looks like, or presumed criminals. I have no idea. One of the men, so XR had also done a thing on Monday, and 2 people sit in at the State House, and 2 people had been arrested in that. And then the same 2 men were arrested again on Thursday, and they went to the same judge who was mad that they were arrested. So he actually kept them overnight. So while I was sitting in the courtroom on Friday morning, one of them was called in, and this is a man in his 60s, older than me, coming in handcuffs and leg shackles. They had a protest and leg shackles, right? Anyway, he was afraid that they could actually hold him on these charges 90 days. He was pretty sure he was going to get 30 days because he knew how angry the judge was. But the judge didn't give him 30 days. He was released then on his own recognizance, given a court date. He came out and he joined us. And then he called us. And so we were 9 women standing there. I was wearing my black clergy collar that day, and my friend Lara was wearing hers. And when we got there that morning, the lawyer said, "I am very pleased with the attire that you chose for court this morning." I mean, you never know how people think about clergy, right? I mean, the judge could dislike us because we're clergy, but the group felt that it gave them more respectability. So might as well do that, right? Anyway, I have no criminal record. Before this, I didn't. And so there was an expectation that they would drop the charges and I would just be released, but they treated us all as one group. And some other people in the group have done this before, so they have criminal records for disorderly conduct. So they actually added a charge, 3 charges: disorderly conduct, unlawful assembly, and failure to leave of a riot. If you saw what we did, it was not a riot, but that's the charge. So I was arraigned on that charge, all of us were, and we have to go back to court on November 27th. So that is what happened this week. As I said to a lot of people then, I have gone past my time. I think of this as part of my job. A lot of ministers don't. I do. I have a great deal of privilege. And I think it's part of my job. So literally, I feel like I'm getting paid to be there. So I will do it again. Because other people can't, and somebody has to. And, it turns out I have special gifts. Who knew I could go 12 hours without using the bathroom? I'm a talented person. Comes in handy. So I just wanted to read you one more quote in order to make this into a sermon instead of a story, where she talks about the hope. Just one paragraph. This again is Margaret Klein Salomon. "Living in climate truth is hard, but it is the only way forward. Once you begin to live in climate truth, you will experience a wide range of emotions, and they will be intense. They will be upsetting and overwhelming, but that is wholly appropriate for the stakes of a crisis that is set to lead to mass destruction and death. Your painful feelings spring from the best parts of yourself, from your empathy, sense of responsibility, love for others, and love of life. These feelings connect you to all life and will fuel the work ahead. Immersing yourself fully in them is a heroic, even sacred undertaking." So, as I said, there's lots of different roles. You don't have to get arrested. There's so many different things that you could do to just, number one, live in the truth. Talk to people about it. Be part of the truth. These feelings connect you to all of life. Immersing yourself fully in them is a heroic, even sacred undertaking. Don't have time for questions, but I'd be happy to talk to you about this more in coffee hour or have a meeting with me separately. Thank you for your good listening. Let us end with a song that I chose way before this, but turns out to be super appropriate. It's Now Let Us Sing, number 368. Please stand as you are willing and able. will remain standing and join me in the chalice extinguishing words, which will be on the screen in just a second. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you so much for joining us for worship today. Tom will end us with a lovely little postlude, and then we'll gather for a snack and coffee hour, which is in the room next door. Happy Sunday. Thank you for being here.